Today's video is going to be talking about film sequels and animated movies. And if you guys are interested in this, then stick around and we shall get right into it. I know this is a bit of a broad topic to talk about, talking about like film sequels, and when it comes to like animations especially. It has been something that I have thought about because of the live action How to Train Your Dragons and then the live action Minecraft film. There is a chance that there are sequels with these films. We all know the amount of sequels that come out with animated films especially, and I could give honestly like multiple different examples about films that have so many sequels, and especially sequels that like are not needed. Although this isn't an animation movie, you have Jaws, but then an animation movie you have Toy Story, Despicable Me, unfortunately, and then you guys will probably know other animated movies with sequels that are just not needed. There are times where there are animated movies and then the sequels are probably better than the actual first film. Now, although we have Moana 2 coming out, there's a chance that could be better than the first Moana film, since the first Moana film actually, I'll admit, like, it is pretty good. It's a bit of a different thing to think about when it comes to talking about why some sequels are bad and why they shouldn't be a thing. Just first touch on, we do know that animations and sequels, those are happening purely because of how well the box office goes for the first film. Given the production company, you have Illumination, which have done all the Despicable Me films, and then you have other stuff, like Blumhouse. You have a lot of them just came to my head. You have Warner Bros. You have literally DC, Marvel, and then like any other animated films, Pixar, Disney. There's a lot of production companies under the sun that have made Disney films. Purely, they will make multiple sequels for films because of how good the first film does. So, as a clear example, we have the first Despicable Me film. As everyone knows, especially at my age, that the first Despicable Me film did do very, very well, and that obviously gave leverage to Illumination, who I believe were the production company for this animation film, to go on to a second one where he meets this random woman, and then we have El Macho, some Mexican evil fella, and then the third film we have a weird ass villain, and then you have apparently Gru has a twin, and then apparently there's a fourth film coming out. Then you also touch on the fact that we have Minions, and then Minions The Rise of Gru. I did have this conversation like with a friend of mine some time ago, talking about like why these aren't needed, but at the same time we did both agree that the only reason these films make so many sequels is purely because they are family-friendly animations and they are purely made for kids. Because kids will watch any sort of good animation film, and whereas people like us, when we're teenagers, will say that they're shit. And a 5-year-old will enjoy a film like Minions Rise of Gru, whereas someone at my age of 21 would think that is an absolutely diabolically bad film, which is purely what it is. And with like other like films that have come out with sequels, another one we have is Toy Story. We know that Toy Story was a massive box office success, and because of that they ended up doing the second film, the third film, and then we had the fourth film, and there, I think from what I've heard, there's some teasers as a fifth film coming out. As we know, this is purely the same as Despicable Me, was that the production company is purely rinsing the money and the popularity that this film is getting, because they're deciding, okay, the first Toy Story film was a huge success, so they did the second one, which actually was also very good, and then the third one, which was, I will admit as well, was pretty good, but then the fourth one, everyone knows this, I can't remember when the fourth one came out. Okay, so after a bit of research, so we know that Toy Story 4 came out in 2019, whereas the third film came out a good few years before that, And like, everyone can easily tell that the quality and the looks of the overall film, like the first three look relatively similar in terms of the quality of it, because softwares weren't that big at the time. But then 2019, because every technology is evolving and all that, everyone can clearly see that in Toy Story 4. The quality and the overall looks of the animation is absolutely brilliant, but the storyline itself of that film is shocking. Now, I haven't watched Toy Story 4, but the fact that they've possibly got a fifth one coming out is bad enough. They're trying to rinse the fact that Toy Story is such a popular animation film. It doesn't make sense as to why they kind of keep on rinsing rinsing these films for more money. We all know, again, these are kid films. Now, there's other films out there that don't have a sequel because their first film was very good. There's definitely more films that I just can't think of. The sequels are just not as good. But a very quick example of a non-animation film would be Jaws. As we all know, the first film came out in 1975, and I know so much about that film because it went from a film that I was terrified of to being one of my favourite films of all time. The first Jaws movie was so iconic and it was so good. Because of how successful that did with the box office, they decided why not make a second one, a third one, and a fourth one. I think everyone here who is watching this video and just knows in general about those Jaws films. First one is the best one. The second, third and fourth one are absolute gob shite. They were just not needed and haven't been bad they were all just bad. That's just one of those films that just never needed a sequel. There's so many other animation films out there. For example, How to Train Your Dragon, didn't mention in my other video. The first one is very iconic because of how good it was and how well it did in the box office. They decided to do another two, and those other two, they were good films, but I think the only thing that kind of takes it and just not make them as good. The first How to Train Your Dragon film is just, it's so iconic, and so the storyline is so simple. With the other two films, they actually have a villain. They have these actual villains who apparently control the dragons and use them for evil crap or whatever. Whereas the first film, it was clearly just, we got character development from a hiccup about training Toothless, and then boom. But then the main villain was just this massive dragon that comes out of a cage or cave. There's not an actual villain in that film, which is what makes it better than the other two. And obviously the other two, there was so much more worked on with the storylines and trying to adapt the characters. Regardless of how much they adapted the storyline for How to Train Your Dragons, the first one was always going to be the best one. Another example that I can give is Shrek. Shrek. Boy, oh boy, have I got some issues with you, Shrek. For all of you die-hard Shrek fans, I will just ask, how in God's name is Shrek your favourite film? If you are someone who's watching this video and actually is a big fan of Shrek and loves that film to absolute bits and knows why it's such a good film, please let me know, because I am so confused as to how Shrek is people's favourite film. It was released in, 2000? But somehow a bunch of people's favourite films. And then the sequels themselves were shit. The first one was very iconic because it was very original. For some reason, they just decided, let's have, think about it, some writer decided to have an ogre be friends with a donkey to save a princess who is apparently an ogre as well. Who writes shit like that? To give credit to the writers, yes, the film was a massive success, but honestly, the other two just were not needed. And that's another easy example of films that didn't need sequels. That's why I'd say overall sequels should not be made. Why animation sequels in general should not be a thing. Even broader, why sequels should not be made unless they can top the first film. I personally don't think that animated films and other films, non-animated films as well, should have a sequel unless the sequel can be either equally as good as the first film or it turns out to be better than the first film. Because if people make a sequel of a film and it turns out to not be as good as the first one, why the fuck did you even make a sequel in the first place? Genuinely, why did you make a sequel? Despicable Me, literally, I can rant on about this for so long. Despicable Me did not need a sequel. It didn't. The first film was good enough. You did not need to rinse it. But I get it. It's a family film. It's animated. It's so much colours. The minions are such an iconic animated character to think of. It's for kids to watch. I get it. It's for kids to watch, but at the same time, It grills my fucking teeth as to why animations like Despicable Me and Toy Story are continuously getting more sequels. You've got all your money, you're fine. You don't need to be making another fucking movie about it because there's no point. You've got enough money from these first films because they did so well. So stop rinsing it. Stop rinsing your money by trying to make more films, because then people are just gonna get bored of like new things. It's bad enough because what the fuck are they gonna do in Despicable Me 5 then? Gru's now got a fucking twin out of the blue. What's next? Genuinely, what's next? You know, I need to contain myself a bit here because I will go off, but I already have. At the end of the day, at the end of the fucking day, some films, especially animated films, do not need a sequel. That's it. That's all you don't need. But yeah, I have another video to get to and record today, so yeah, I will leave this one there if you guys want to debate with me. But yeah, at the end of the day, sequels don't need to be made just because of how successful a film did. That's it.